So Ukraine is cutting off Crimea, which is part of a deliberate strategy that Russia can see playing out, but so far has been unable to stop. I mean, just a few days ago, Russian war correspondent Veteran Notes said, quote, "The situation in Crimea is worsening every week, and by the fall, if the situation is not reversed, the peninsula could be in a state of siege," end quote. So today we're going to take a look at exactly how the isolation of Crimea is happening, and stick around for the end of today's video. We've got some exclusive high-stress footage from the 104th Brigade showing how pickup trucks that we provide are used at and near the front. This is the impact that you all are having day in and day out. Now, starting with a map here to give you an idea of the challenges that Russia faces in protecting Crimea. This is the southern portion of occupied Ukraine. You've effectively got three ways into and out of Crimea. Overland, that's cars on roads, and then rail lines, by sea and by air. Now, when looking at the overland routes, and we're going to walk through each one of these in detail today, there's two overland routes from the north, and you've got one coming from the east to the west over the Kerch Bridge. Historically, like over the past couple years, 95% of the supplies going to Crimea have come via these overland routes. So either through the southern portion of occupied Ukraine or across the Kerch Bridge. You also then have the sea routes, which could be either here through the Sea of Azov to the northeast or around the southern portion, maybe to the western coast here of Crimea or some of these ports in the south. The sea routes have only accounted for about 4% of supplies to Crimea. And then, of course, you have airlift, strategic airlift if needed to provide anything for civilians or military. Only 1% of supplies have come to Crimea via air in recent years. Now, as a little bit of context here, over the past few months, we have seen Ukraine roll out what they call their middle strike campaign. In short, they have mass-produced drones that can hit targets 50 to 300 kilometers behind the front and have created a situation where Russia simply cannot defend everywhere all at once. Now, a lot of these drones are getting through every day, and it's causing a pretty significant disruption, not only to Russian logistics, but their planning as well. I mean, to be blunt, if you can't resupply your forces at the front, that front is not going to exist very long. And that is the long-term picture that pro-Russian commentators are watching right now, saying this issue, this logistics issue, has to be resolved ASAP. And as we sit here today, it hasn't. Now, starting with the strikes that Ukraine has been carrying out to isolate the Crimean Peninsula, we're going to start up here in the northeast, this Chongar route that was hit a couple of times over the course of the last week or so. You'll see this bridge here. We'll pull it up with some satellite imagery, and I think we've got some footage of this bridge being hit as well. Russian correspondent, military informant said, quote, "The enemy has repeatedly attacked the bridge in Chongar, which is again damaged. In theory, Ukraine could regularly launch several drones over the bridge, damaging it each time, and preventing repair crews from properly restoring the damage, which would disrupt logistics even without destroying the bridge itself." That's one little component here. So long as Ukraine has the ability to range these areas with even limited munitions, it puts a strain on the traffic. And you're having drivers say, well, we're not going to go that route, or at the very least slows it down to a considerable amount. Now, there's a kind of avalanche effect here, a ripple effect, if you will. So when we look at the Chongar approach in the east, we'll go back to the other map here. I think this is a little bit easier to see the bridges coming in. With this bridge closed down, Russia is having to push further west to come across land routes in the north. The challenge here is look at the route they're going to have to go around, adds significant wear and tear, a lot of extra fuel used when there's already fuel shortages in portions of these territories. It also brings them, we'll pull the ruler back out, this area here, we'll say is 132 kilometers from Ukrainian positions. When you get over here, all of a sudden you're 70 less. I mean, I don't know how far north they're going to have to drive to make this approach, but it brings all of the Russian logistics that much closer to Ukrainian drones. What do you think happened when that was rolled out? Deep State Map, talking about this, said it's a trap. They said using this route, the alternate route to the west, stretches Russian logistics by about 100 kilometers, which complicates the process of intensity of supply, increases the wear and tear of equipment and fuel consumption. But most importantly, it's a shorter distance for Ukrainian drones. And we actually saw this playing out just yesterday. A military informant speaking to this as well said, quote, again, a Russian source, said, "As we anticipated, the enemy began to use their kamikaze drones with powerful warheads to attack truck parking areas, which are piling up due to traffic congestion after the bridges were destroyed. Despite more than 2 months of attacks on logistics, nothing has been done to set up protected parking areas. If the systematic nature of the strikes continues, the transport accessibility of the peninsula through new territories will be seriously disrupted, and it will be necessary to open the Crimean bridge for trucks with the risk of losing it as well. Which brings us to the other overland route. So right now, we are seeing pretty consistent Ukrainian strikes on the two land routes moving into northern Crimea. That's a problem for Russia. Again, even if it just drops by 20, 30, 40% and does not have to get to zero, becomes a major issue keeping Russian forces supplied in Crimea and moving anybody back out to Russian territory. But let's shift over to the other overland route, the Kerch Bridge, which has not, to my knowledge, been hit anytime soon. But we're hearing more and more from Russian sources saying this is about to become a priority target. In fact, Alexander Kotz, another Russian reporter here, said, quote, "The corridor is being attacked by Ukrainian drones. Fuel tankers and trucks are regularly set on fire. One by one, the threads connecting the peninsula to the mainland are being severed. What will be the final link in this chain? The answer suggests itself, the Crimean bridge." It makes sense, right? This isn't rocket science. It's, you start to cut off the territory to the north. What comes next? The one artery in the east. Now, I should note that even without cutting off the Kerch Bridge, the northern approaches is where the vast majority of overland supplies have come into and out of Crimea over the course of the last few years. So even if you just shut these down by 50%, it is a major, major, major hit to Russians on the peninsula. Now, there are other options here, right? We have sea routes through the Sea of Azov around the Black Sea and then the air corridor as well. The sea is not used nearly as much as you might think in this regard. There's an estimated 40,000 tons per month moved by sea to supply Crimea, and there's limited capacity. If we zoom out a little bit here, there's no new ships coming into the Black Sea or the Sea of Azov. So whatever Russia has there right now, that's it in terms of their capacity. They can't build up a new Russian armada to try to keep Crimea supplied by sea. And even if they did, these are slow-moving targets, and the ports in this area are getting hit. I mean, the 1st National Guard Corps Azov just released this footage, I think yesterday. To give you an idea, we've seen multiple ships get hit, but Azov said that they went after targets in the Mariupol Sea commercial port. They say the port was used by the enemy for military logistics, as well as the illegal export of Ukrainian grain, coal, and metal to Russia. As a result of the strike, the port's energy, repair, and management infrastructure, as well as facilities supporting port logistics operations, were damaged. So, if they decide to go the sea route, they've got some pretty big stationary ports that are going to come under continued Ukrainian attacks. Again, even if Russia wanted to scale up the sea route, there's only a little bit more that they can do in that regard, which brings us over to the air corridor, right? We are still seeing Russian aircraft flying over Crimea. They have the ability to fly strategic aircraft in here, but it's just not very much, and it's really not built to be able to sustain that. So as of right now, the last few years has seen an average of 8,000 tons being brought in by airlift, 8,000 tons per month brought in via airlift to Crimea. And if you start isolating this to where the only way Russia is getting supplies is some, new Russian airlift 2026, talk about a good way to lose aircraft, right? Limited airfields, well within range of Ukrainian drones, having to cycle in and out all day, every day. I mean, come on. We know that there's going to be strategic aircraft either knocked out of the sky by Ukrainian drones or just hammered when they're on the tarmac. Either way, let's say the drones were no threat there and Russia had free reign over the entirety of the sky. They don't even have the airlift capacity to keep Crimea operational. So roughly speaking, Russia has around 120 IL-76 strategic transport aircraft. Each of those has around a 60-ton capacity. That would require, again, talking right now, 600,000 tons going into Crimea every single month. That means that Russia would have to fly 10,000 supply sorties, supply missions into Crimea every month, or one every 4 minutes for 30 days. It's just not feasible to do that. I mean, aircraft go down. Not all of those are actually operational. And to land, unload all of that equipment, and get back in the sky and turn and burn, it's just not feasible. So yes, Russia could potentially bring in a little bit more via air, but if they have to rely on even the sea and air corridor entirely, you're talking about a collapse of the logistics system in Crimea. And one of the key issues here is as we see the logistics issue becoming bigger and bigger problem for Crimea or for Russia, they're having to relocate air defense assets. So this is a conversation we've had now for a few months where Russia has a limited amount of technologies and capabilities to intercept Ukrainian air defense, be it radars or interceptors or even guns and air defense systems. As Ukraine has stretched the battlefield and started hitting targets across Russia, Russia has been forced to relocate some of those systems to the more priority targets, right? We saw a major plant get hit a few days ago, pretty far east of Moscow. You can expect that is going to be on the receiving end of some new air defense system. These are not rolling off the assembly line day in and day out, which means they have to come from somewhere else. So now that there is a focus on Crimea and isolating this peninsula, there's not like some warehouse full of a bunch of air defense assets that Russia can just surge into this area or the other. If they decide that they're going to heavily protect the northern approaches or the Kerch Bridge or the airspace over Crimea, that comes at the cost of somewhere else. Now, to that end, we have started to see some Russian response. In just the last couple of days, we have seen them start to release footage showing interceptor drones being used along this southern corridor, trying to identify and bring down some of these long-range Ukrainian drones. And this is a good time to bring up, Russia has the technology to do this, right? They can intercept Ukrainian drones, and they have been this entire time. The difference that we're seeing right now is mostly in volume. So Ukraine developed the capacity to strike at a longer distance, then ramped up that volume at such a pace that Russia has not been able to keep up with their interceptors or their mobile air defense teams. We're starting to see those arrive in the southern approaches throughout areas of occupied Ukraine where they, just a few weeks ago weren't really needed. The question now is, does Ukraine have enough drones to be able to keep up that pressure before Russia can surge or develop any of these new systems in the defense? Now, one of the conversations I'm seeing on Russian media right now is to mass some of these air defense, some of these mobile air defense teams around bridges. Instead of trying to protect, we'll go back to the map here real quick, instead of trying to protect all of the occupied territory, being very, very selective. And again, this comes back to the point earlier of if you decide that you have to protect these two bridges at all costs, you're pulling from somewhere else, all right? It opens up other viable targets. It would be interesting to see if Russia does this. They would be able to put a number, create a hard point defense around an area they know is going to be the focus of Ukrainian drone strikes. That makes sense. That could be an increasing challenge for Ukraine. But I do want to say, why is that not happening elsewhere? I mean, we're seeing refineries and weapons manufacturing facilities getting hit day in and day out. And if they're not surging air defense assets there, it kind of makes you wonder about the process of reallocating priorities and the number of assets they have available to do something like that. But again, Russia is adapting. We should expect them to continue to adapt. The race is on right now to see if Ukraine can inflict maximum damage before Russia has a viable counter. Now, quick fundraiser update. We just delivered the 16th vehicle to the 104th Territorial Defense Brigade, and they sent over some footage that I wanted to share with you guys showing how these trucks are being used on and near the front. So to learn more about this campaign or to participate, the link will be in the pinned comment and description below. We'll wrap with a video from the 104th. Here we go.
Так, я прямо і прямо. Ована. Ована. Ця хуйня злетіла по дорозі. Не обіссудьте. Хачапурі заберіть. Ти оптику собрав камерою. Все, давай. А назад що, блядь, як? Що? Де вона? А вон вони. Далеко? Норм. Близько. Я праву. Не зриваються нахуй, але їм пізда вже. Все, їдемо нахуй. Все. Стой, Жигуль їде. Все, вйобуємо нахуй.
Газ, газ,